Natasha. I'm from the Poetry Center, and we are a nonprofit here in Chicago, and we have readings, workshops, and we work with the Chicago Public Schools to have teaching artists teach poetry. So we do a lot of things for the city, and our main mission is to spread poetry everywhere, like a fungus. And so we're here in Humboldt Park. It's a beautiful day, and this is a part of our Poetry in the Parks series. So all summer long we've been in the parks. So last month we were at Garfield Park with the American Writers Museum, and today we're here at Humboldt Park. And our partner for our Poetry in the Parks is the Read Write Library. So if some of you noticed over in the boathouse, they have their bibliotreca, which they bring on over to events, and it's an awesome bike that opens up into a library. So we'll have books there for you, and they'll be like coming on over to meet us here. And yeah, so let's get started. Okay, so what else do we have going on? Yeah, we can get started with Keith. So Keith S. Wilson is a game designer, an Afro-Latin poet, Cave Canem Fellow, and graduate of the Callaloo Creative Writing Workshop. He serves as assistant poetry editor at Four Way Review and digital media editor and web consultant at Obsidian Journal. Keith has received 3 scholarships from Breadloaf, as well as scholarships from the Millie Colony, Poetry by the Sea, and the Virginia Center for the Creative Arts. He holds an MFA in poetry from Chicago State University. Please welcome Keith Wilson.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, so this is awesome. Thank you for inviting me. I live in Hyde Park, and I never leave Hyde Park, so it's awesome to get out of the South Side, I guess, for a moment. It's a beautiful day and a beautiful park. This is an awesome thing. I tried to go through my stuff and choose my least sad stuff, and the fact that this is outside, in a beautiful area, I think makes it especially appropriate. But it's still gonna be kind of sad, probably. It's just the least sad stuff I have. But this first poem is part of a series that I have that is kind of love poems, sad love poems that are related to space imagery and science imagery, actually. You'll hear more of it in the second poem, but there's some of that in this poem too. It's called 6:45 p.m. And the door opened in, as a sapphire asserts a certainty of blue, and you, through the hall like an alarm. And my body determined some parcel of space, your lips in passing, and you reclined into the silence of the bed, and must have always found yourself there while I was not thinking. How surely you dreamed. And what was in your head was a better thing than art, or rather, it was more beautiful to wonder than to know. The absent-minded stretches of you where I might, while sitting, hit a deer. What made you finally stand? It's astounding I never upset you of your mystery. Loving is a misnomer because you are expected of your heart's opinion on a sentence that is never completed, even as you're having it. Nothing must be more free than the feeling of the right to leave. You were really something like a cutting, the way you laid yourself in water every night reading. But the days average on, and the planets circle around us like sharks. God, it's pretty, but what does any of it mean? This next poem is, in a lot of ways, very directly related to that poem, and it also has to do with this thing that I'm really into, which is the idea of I write a lot of love poetry, but I'm really interested in the most ordinary kind of love. So I'm not interested in really big shows of love. I'm interested in the everyday stuff that kind of is boring. So this poem is about laying in bed. It's called Ode to Collapsed Star. You bankrupt the sun, underwater statue, dark galaxy of faults, our bed a garden of the littlest size of our waking, our room abstract, our body heat in space, the condensation as the light makes heaven of it. We're early, curved and signatory, the sheets paler than the sky and made of immaterial. My hands confused for want of your hands, or waste. Rolling, What claims we make of earth, what is inferred and isn't sure, what the undersides of the leaves of the forest floor are called. Your breath, my limbs and yours. All of space cannot be space. Arousing patches in the grass, a mouse I never said to you, invasion of clover, black pollen of your hair. Only yesterday I said I love, the opposite of stars, the moon's clear effects on the sea. In sleep, no body is the lead. I'm dreaming imaginary numbers of fruit flies, mercury and birdsong, and the trash collector, and the water glittering beige in the street, of the Milky Way as portrayed by the swirl of your waves. I ought to have married you against the ifs of this world, out of flux with all the dishes and the dust on the books, and your late mornings, each movement I have missed like this, and I accustomed to the wall when I awake, the exodus of your laugh, mascara. This next poem is by a poet who I really love named D.H. Lawrence. I guess he's probably more famous as a short story writer, but I really, really love his poetry. And so for a little while I was trying to read something by him and then write something sort of in response to it. And this poem is after one of his poems, and it's like written in the form of the poem in the rhyme scheme. So it's like a poem that actually rhymes. I rarely write those. And it's also inspired by like the Black Lives Matter movement. So it's called Black Matters, after D.H. Lawrence. Shall I tell you then that we exist? There came a light, blue and white careening, the police like wailing angels to bitter me. And so this, dark matter is hypothetical. Know that it cannot be seen in the gunpowder of a flower, in a worm that raisins on the concrete, in a man that wills himself not to speak. Gags, oh gags, for a shadow cannot breathe. It deprives them of nothing. Pride is born in the black and dies in it. I hear our shadow, low treble of the clasping of our hands. Dark matter is invisible. We infer it, how light bends around a black body, and still you do not see black halos even here, my having told you plainly where they are. So this next poem is, I write a lot of ekphrastic poetry, so like I like to look at a painting and sort of write in response to it. And in my old apartment, I went downstairs and found a painting that was just like sitting in the room, and I took it upstairs and I hung it above my TV because I liked it. And just over a couple years, I'd seen it so many times because it was above the TV that I finally wrote something about it. And the painting is by Degas, and it has a bunch of women on a stage and a bunch of faces looking at them. And I wrote from the perspective of one of the women on the stage. This is called Impression of a Rib. I have a red dress and no eyes. I have a dress that is blood red, and I have eyes that don't blink when the balcony sucks in. My dress is a beat swollen with thought, and hangs like a body on my body. I have eyes that don't blink at being seen. I was halfway finished before I saw I'd begun. My dress drips down the center. My eyes are needle holes, and my dress is an over-red thread. I hang my words in the air by their feet, limp and damp, and my dress is my only laugh that is actually red. My eyes are the backs of moons, and afterwards men jest us like children, and smoke, and women who have been my dress circle their stomachs with their hands. I'm an actress. This is not my mother tongue. I have a dress that is yellow. My lines are written by a Parisian man. We met in London. I came dancing out like God upon a crimson wave. My dress hung like a question or a suddenness. He wrote me coming out this way, he says, to make me like a lioness. The constellations are full of dead women, he says. He says, my dress is the coat of a great lion. I turn like the blood inside a rose. The crowd is a great gasp. I can feel myself become a pear. It's as if you haven't taken pills, he says. I still have that dress. It's not too blonde or red. You can grasp it with your eyes, he said, the way you wear it. It's wind. So this next poem is And I feel like every time I describe this poem, I describe it differently, but it's sort of, it's about my dad, and it's about how I love my dad like more than almost any other person in the world. Like, we're very much alike. But there's like ways in which the way that he was raised, like the way that his dad taught him masculinity, was really damaging to him. And the way that he taught me masculinity was probably very damaging to me. But in a lot of ways, like, it was an improvement on the way that he was taught. And so this is about that. The way I hold my hands. I can't imagine my father wishing he would rather be anything. Once upon a time, he was a watermelon growing from a box. His mother died. His father beat the blood out of him, and teardrops dripped black from his face into his food. My father's father made him eat his dinner through himself. The Miracle Whip salad spangled like dew in the garden. This isn't a figure of speech. My father ate his blood. It's hard to think he must have been young. He made me stop all my life. He told me not to be a girl. Whatever I was doing, of course I stopped. He kissed me on the top of the head before I went to bed each night. He was always there. He read to my brother. He read to me from a book of animals. This is a fox's paw. This is a bear's, he told me. I'll give you something to cry about. He never touched me. Bear claw, I said. Winters are easier for bears. I spread my fingers over his. No, my father said. This next poem, I was trying to write like a poem, I guess, like loosely inspired by like everything that Claudia Rankine writes, which is maybe everything I write is loosely inspired by everything that Claudia Rankine writes. And then also like kind of like Maggie Nelson's Bluettes, which is like a study in the color blue. But I wanted to do it about blackness, like the color and the race and everything. And the more that I started trying to write that, the more that I realized like the poem was about a bunch of different like kind of racist incidents that happened to me when I lived in Kentucky, that surrounded like fields, different fields in Kentucky. So this is called Field Notes. 1. In physics, dark matter isn't made of anything. It's a free citizen that passes unburdened through the field, through itself, through you. 2. It helps to observe from a distance, the field, for instance, as a statement the South has chosen to make. The way whiteness, too, is often rhetorical, as when an older student remarks in those beginning days that only he observed MLK's holiday while his black friends working did not. 3. Sometimes love is a black dot in a field. Sometimes suddenly it is not. 4. Or how can black be the absence of all color? Take this cruiser, the light striking blue off the car like copper through a fountain. There's a difference, or 5. There's a difference between what is fair and what is just. For instance, it is fair that I try to love your skin even when it is not touching my own. 6. Whiteness is an alibi. The way the officer was like a steamliner, only I could see. 7. Inside where nothing shows, I am of course not black, but that does not matter to the field. 8. Some colors are indistinguishable at night. Put your hands behind your back, a different cop once asked me. It was so sincere. He was so polite. 9. As a boy, you learn to know the inside without being required to feel it, as when now I understand a bucket or a hood. 10. He asks my girlfriend not if she is white, since even in this light what we are is obvious, but instead he speaks philosophically. Ma'am, he asks, are you here of your own free will? 11. Sometimes whiteness is a form itself of hyperbole. Try this. Sit in a field. Then try reading Andrew Jackson's quotes on liberty, only pretend they are being written by his slaves. 12. Look at the word black on the paper, and you will see a definite black, a kind, a certainty. Or if you see nothing at all, that of course is a kind of black too. 13. By the road, my father showed me cotton once. Look at that, he said. Um, I'm gonna read one more poem. It's probably like my most optimistic one, so I want to end with it. So like having lived in Chicago for like 6 or 7 years, I don't know how long anymore. I've gotten really used to pigeons basically. Like every day I walk to and from work or to the bus stop. A lot, like I usually go underneath this bridge where there's like all these pigeons that are around, and I've loved pigeons like my whole life, but it's especially it's like gotten worse, I guess, since I've been in Chicago. And I think there's like a lot of reasons for that, but one of the things I really love about pigeons is that they like still manage to live in the city. That like it's an animal that it's like if you write romantic poetry about nature and you live in the city, like you have to write about pigeons, I think. So this is a poem that's sort of about that, and it's also based on the idea that like pigeons are essentially the same bird as doves. So doves are pure white and represent all these like high ideals, and you release them at weddings, and they represent hope and all these different things. And pigeons are like the exact same bird with color on it, and they're like vermin, and we want to get rid of them. So this is a poem about all of that called "I Find Myself Defending Pigeons." I love how you never find their bodies, how they never rest their eyes. I love how their breasts are comforters unfolding by their breath. I love that pigeons live in the city, that underestimation never stopped a pigeon from unlatching itself or being old. I want them all unspooling in the air, and bridges that are half sigh and half pigeon. I want to harbor their coo and utilize it for energy. I want to learn to use them the way they want to be used. I want to pigeon-tail into a quiet night, to let their oddness sit in our hands. You can never know a language until you quiet your own. I want people to write about them. They're leaving ships for land, or standing on their own on a marble statue in the shimmer of a field. I want to talk about the term rock dove, argue over whether or not it's imperialist. I want the media to implicate us in the pigeon problem, for a couple to sit with their asparagus and kids and realize none of this is far from them, whatever we think. I want oils and watercolors and inks. I want still life with pigeons, since not a one has ever been portrayed with soul. A flight of them around old bread. And how they're all the same. How all the world is here with them in hate, since they are rats adorned with angel wings. And the children down the street are free to chase their drag. They want to see a pigeon's rouge entirely. Let the pigeon have her pigment. Consider the pigeons brown and green and everything. The brandishing of his nakedness to the sun, as if nothing is absolute. I love the pigeon's shoulders, tongues, and wedding nights. I love the pigeon's place in history, their obsession with living in the letters of our signs. I love their minds, or what I've come to believe is their theology. Who knows? Let the pigeons speak. Ask the closest pigeon for his number, for her middle name, if they are ready to die, if the sky gets crowded enough to consider war, if their stores are closed on Sundays. I want to be ready for them to be just like us, but more ready for them to be completely different. I don't want to waste any time tracing a pigeon's God to Abraham. I want to get started. Some of us feed pigeons. I love sometimes our care. I love, I think, the park bench. I love apples, but I do not love pears. The weather. I love the pigeons, the revolution of wheel to sky. I love the newspaper graying in a different air. Thank you, guys.
Pigeon poetry is definitely a thing. I was in a collaborative writing class, and our final project was all centered around pigeons. So I thought I should make a pigeon poem anthology, so you're inspiring me even more. Thank you, Keith. That was amazing. And now let us welcome Kathy Fagan. Kathy's 5th collection of poems is Sycamore, which we have on our biblioteca that you can purchase from her afterwards. Her first collection, The Raft, won the National Poetry Series. Her second, Moving and Saint Rage, won the Vassar Miller Poetry Prize. And recent work appears in Poetry, Numero 5, The New Republic, Blackbird, Crazy Horse, and the Adroit Journal. Fagan directs the MFA program at The Ohio State University and serves as series editor of the OSU Press / the Journal Wheeler Poetry Prize. Please welcome Kathy Fagan.
Thank you. Thanks for being here this evening. This is probably like the best space I've ever read in, like ever. I really, really like it a lot, except that this tree is not a sycamore, sadly. That's the only way that this could be better, is if we were reading under a sycamore. It's really a gorgeous tree. I loved your poems so much. Really, really like them. So thanks, Natasha, for having me to do this, and thanks to the Poetry Center. Should I be up closer? Yeah, okay. I'm just going to read from this book because it just came out a few months ago. Sycamore is primarily about one very hard winter and a very hard loss. Using the sycamore as a figure on which to focus attention helped me cope with my grief, and writing the poems gave me a vocabulary for it. So how things get named and how strange human language is one obsession here, and you'll hear that, I think, in all these poems, but in particular this first poem, which is called Caro Nome, which is just Italian for dearest name. Jets shake the air, and snow breaks off a tree branch in little puffs. One cardinal, cars moving slowly downhill on the ice. It is always someone's last day. Dearest bird, she read from the card she'd found unattached to the flowers. Happy day to our sweetest heart, love, monster, and beef dad. Their secret language. Manischewitz, she calls me for the sweetness. Manitoba for the expanse. Deer rest in snow, charcoal muzzle to charcoal hoof, heads slung over their shoulders like swans. One is in REM. Look at it dreaming, she said. Fern buttons unwheel in a dark place behind the snow, a contrast she loves in me. The sledding hill is closed, the days like an unused billboard, but sunsets have been fantastic, jewel-toned as the flowers unattached to the card, or hot like the cardinal who pins the whole picture up with your eye. Meanwhile, her tree is an iron room with the moon inside. Its branches have a mental disorder, so sunsets keep dodging them. I am the color of that tree she loves, and nearly as still. And my blood, which is not in this picture, will soon cool. Sunset winking out in my eyes, and her eyes welling in a language that once fell and rose in drifts, then melted. Starry, she said, starry, into my warm coat. Wow. What are those guys? Are they starlings? They're fabulous. They are angry about something, it sounds like. Okay, so sycamore trees, and they're everywhere. They're universal trees. They go by different names. Plane trees in Europe. They're all over the world, and they like to live in families, and most often near rivers because they like to have their feet wet. And to see them in full sun in wintertime is truly high drama, and that's what this poem is about. Can I move this? Yeah. Wow. I like that background music, even better than the bossa nova. Sycamores at high noon. Chalk on the blackboard dry. I'm chalk on the street. I am your outline, your line out, your line up, your lesson. Kilimanjaro's infinitum, choirs of whitewashed roller coasters past. Gully, you know me, the silver linings apostolic lab-coated host of me. Advancing like a wood, more ghostly than Banquo, I cast no shadow. And vertically I barely creak in wind that raised and hung me out to dry, broken in several places, breaking all the day I need. So across the course of several books I've been working, the only sort of formal poems I've been writing are pantoums, which is an ancient Malayan verse form. It's just a repeating verse form, and you'll hear the lines repeating here. I mostly got interested in writing pantoums because I thought naming them like Gloom and Doom Pantoum and Go to Your Room Pantoum would be kind of funny. And so I did that, probably way too many of them. Somebody challenged me to write a Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon Pantoum. I haven't done that yet. This one's called Kaboom Pantoum. I'll ring the bells, Ohio, tomorrow, when stars come due like lice to a grackle. Ohio, tomorrow is winter, and every winter, like lice on a grackle, we must drive defensively. This winter and every winter, I wait too long to wear a coat. We must dress defensively, but last minute still counts. If I wait to wear a coat, will you wait with me? Last minutes still count. Maybe more than last words. Will you wait with me? Take sequoia, for example. Maybe more than last words, word games reveal a lot. Sequoia, for example, is the shortest word to use each vowel once. Word games reveal a lot. Short word, tall tree, A-E-I-O-U. The tallest tree to use each vowel once does not thrive in Ohio. Short word, I, double O, no U-A-E. Bell in the mouth at either end. A few weeks ago, I lost my mom. And this is the only poem I've written for her in decades. And luckily it appears in this book, so I don't often read it, but I'd like to read it for you now. One thing she and I had in common was we were both abysmally bad at math. And this is called Word Problem with Waves in Its Hair. There were 20 frittatas in that oven at any given time. They were little frittatas. There were starlings nesting in the wall beside the fridge. The knob on the oven looked like the combination lock to a safe. I desired to turn it in my hand like a curl in my mother's hair. She took me to the beach when she wanted waves in mine. She wanted to put somebody in it, she said. She already had my brother in her. He was a guppy in her belly then, and I her starfish, all replaceable appendage. Shells thrilled me, always filled with something, brains or flakes off the moon, and jellyfish like the inside of an elbow. My mother liked her beach stones wet and her sand dry, a flash mob of zha-zhas on the busy lip of every cresting wave. But nothing, not even the sun, could make me squint like the sharp tips of her glistening hair. The octopus has 8 arms, she said, 3 hearts. Octo 8, carry the 3. Plus, there are 2 sides to each horizon, as there are to every wall. There were never frittatas in that oven, but she may have mentioned them once, when long straw and short straw were the verticals we made, our different hair whipping greetings, though our backs were to them all. This poem is called Perpendicular. I don't think I have anything that I need to say about it, and these will be the last 2 poems. It would have been a fine path for a lizard to cross, but I saw none. Brambles and sweetbriar grew on the town side, poppies and wild grasses on the river. Too hot for birds, the ducks were out, in water and mud, and frogs were out by the hundreds, it seemed, saying way, way in their deepest voices. It was beautiful there, but I'd seen beauty and its opposite so often that when warmth broke over my skin, I remembered winter, the way fresh grief undoes you the moment you're fully awake. I asked my young friend, when she turned 2, what she would serve at her birthday party, and she said tofu and cupcakes. When she was 3, and I was very sad, she called and said, "What are you doing? Picking flowers?" She talked in poems like she was dreaming all the time, or very old, or Virginia Woolf. More often in the first world, one wakes from, not to the nightmare. When I dreamed I lost my love, I willed myself awake because I would not survive the pain again, even dreaming. Which is responsible for that mercy, doctor? The conscious or the un? I want the poppies picked, and I want the poppies left where they grow. Like looking through the window of a moving train at someone walking up a road lined with poplars, and being someone walking up a road lined with poplars. The train and the trees, a shower of petals and bees, sun on the glass, and the train perpendicular to the road. Things entirely themselves, arriving in the deep double shadows of the grass and passers-by. This final poem is called Inscription. It takes place on the Canal de Midi in France, where, and makes reference also to the tree disease that killed and continues to kill many of the sycamore there, or plane trees as they call them. There's also at the end of the poem the phrase sex toys, and I feel compelled to tell you that it's spelled, this is France, Sexetoyes. I don't know, Vive la France. Inscription, Canal de Midi, France. Arcades of plane trees arc aves above the canal. I know they are not a choir. I know they are not kabuki, tusk, knuckle, or the swords and flames St. Joan rode into, although it's true I think of them as these, and as the sky's deep pockets of snow, white keys, mammoth teeth. It is my way and my need, mes amours, sycamore, my emblems on a crest, gallery of visible ghosts. Mostly, I love the light they hold inside, the all too much and aged toujours of them, their airborne electricities. Who's to explain affinities like these? 2 seas were joined this way in 1681, sparing sailors from piracy and storms. In the 1830s, planes were planted on its banks to protect vacationers from sun. Now, a careless tourist nicks a tree with rope and spreads disease that will kill them all. Ceratocystis platani, traced to munitions boxes brought by World War II GIs. 42,000 must be felled and burned to save, scientists hope, the remaining planes, cousin to our sycamore, that is the wood that made the box, that held the fungus riding in the waters of the canal. Measures have been taken, the road to hell, etc. St. Joan, finally, was burned to death for the cross-dressing. Kabuki theaters incinerated by soldiers for their drag shows and wartime sympathies. Sorrow, desire. There are so many auto fatalities on plane-lined streets here, the French joke about why the tree crossed the road. They burn the hollows out sometimes, inscribe vaginal lips around the gashes in swaths of hot pink paint. What we leave behind, and what is left of us, are related questions. The graves in town are up to 3 centuries old. Some crypts, forged crosses, chipped wreaths of ceramic flowers, earth gouged, trees felled, buildings raised, never mind the lives. In the New World, a fungus-resistant sycamore is bred to replace relatives destroyed at the canal. Measures taken, like swapping out the burnt-out bulbs on a string of Christmas lights. So what if we are replaceable? Mostly I love how we burst the prisons of our skins and shine. Outside the cemetery, someone's magic markered a locked electrical box with the words, sex toys. The plaques on the graves nearby are inscribed souvenir and regret, which are, even in my language, polite ways of saying done. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Keith. That was really, really great. We're approaching sunset. This is the best time. I'm super happy about this. Yeah, thank you all for coming. So we're going to hang out here. Feel free to check out Sycamore from Kathy. She'll be selling it to you on her little square. And feel free to check out our biblioteca. They have, basically, it's a bicycle pop-up library. So they pick books for you to peruse. So you can check out their library, which is also in Humboldt Park off of California. So feel free to check out that space. It's a really good place to like work and like look at books and just be inspired. So our last Poetry in the Parks reading is going to be on August 31st. We're going to be on the Chicago water taxi. So we're going to meet up there on the Michigan stop, and then we're going to take the taxi with our two poets, Aaron Coleman and Vita Cross, and they're going to read poems for us on the water taxi and at Paintown Park, which will be our final destination. So we'll be under the pagoda there. So that'll be really fun. And thank you again for coming, and we hope to see you around.